The first time I realized something was wrong was when my Zoom call with a Pentagon project manager froze mid-sentence. 1 second I was presenting network security updates, the next I was staring at a pixelated mess of frozen faces. My internet dropped completely, which was strange because I have a dedicated fiber line, stable enough to livestream a rocket launch without hiccup. I ran outside, phone in hand, thinking maybe the junction box on the side of my house had tripped. That's when I saw her. Karen, standing in my yard with a pair of garden shears like she was pruning roses, except she was holding my internet cable like it was a weed choking her flower bed. She smiled at me, triumphant, and said, "This community doesn't need unsightly wires running across lawns. The HOA has rules. Consider this a courtesy enforcement." She snipped, and my entire world went dark. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I just stood there, because in the 30 seconds it took her to sever my line, she had cut not just my home internet but my live Pentagon clearance meeting feed. I wasn't just some guy browsing cat videos. My connection was part of a secure channel tied to federal projects. Every dropped second flagged alerts somewhere. My pulse spiked. I knew exactly what was about to happen, and I almost felt bad for her. Almost. Karen strutted closer, waving the cut piece of cable like a captured snake. "Honestly, you should thank me," she continued. "People like you think you can clutter the neighborhood with your gadgets, but the HOA exists for order. I don't know what you do in there all day, but it looks suspicious. Wires, antennas, blinking lights, it's like you're spying on us. If you're going to bring trouble here, I'll have to take matters into my own hands." My phone buzzed in my hand. Secure channel breach notifications. Priority alerts. The Pentagon's automated monitoring system had already detected the cut. She thought she was flexing HOA power, but in reality she had just tripped alarms that summoned federal attention faster than a pizza delivery. I took a slow breath and replied with the driest sarcasm I could muster. "Karen, do you know what you just cut? That wasn't a cluttered wire. That was a federal operations feed. You just severed communications with the Department of Defense." Her smirk faltered, but only for a moment. "Oh please," she scoffed. "Don't try to scare me with your fake government mumbo-jumbo. Everyone knows you people exaggerate. The HOA board has more authority here than whatever you claim." As if on cue, a black SUV turned onto the street, followed by another. My neighbors' heads started poking out from behind curtains. Karen's bravado started to drain as the vehicles pulled up and men in dark suits with earpieces stepped out. One of them glanced at the severed line in her hand, then at me, then back at her. "Sir, we detected an abrupt termination of the secure line. Was it deliberate?" I pointed at Karen, who was now clutching the cut cable like it might save her. She decided my internet was an HOA violation. The lead agent's jaw flexed. "Understood." He pulled out a phone, barked something into it, and within moments another SUV rolled up, this one emblazoned with government plates. Neighbors gathered on lawns, whispering. Karen's face drained of color. "I told you," I said quietly to her, my tone calm but sharp enough to cut. 30 minutes. That's how long it takes when a secure Pentagon feed goes dark. Less if they're already monitoring. You just made yourself the star of their report. Karen tried to recover her footing, sputtering about neighborhood rights, about maintaining property values, about how she didn't recognize their authority. But the men didn't argue. They were already documenting the scene, photographing the cut line, her shears, even the patch of dirt she had trampled in her crusade. That was when she made her next mistake. Instead of apologizing, or even staying silent, she doubled down. "You can't just storm into our community like this. I'm on the HOA board, and that gives me jurisdiction here. This man is the problem. He's the one bringing military attention into our quiet neighborhood." The lead agent turned his gaze on her, icy and professional. "Ma'am, you have interfered with federal communications infrastructure. That is a felony offense. Your HOA has no jurisdiction here." Her knees wobbled. For the first time since I had moved into this neighborhood, I saw Karen's certainty crack. But instead of stepping back, she lashed out in the way only someone like her could. Then I'll sue him. He never asked for HOA approval for his, whatever this is. You'll all hear from my lawyer. The agents didn't flinch. They simply radioed in another vehicle. This time, it wasn't another SUV. It was a van, the kind with racks of equipment inside. They set it up right in front of her driveway. Neighbors gasped. Karen's empire of self-importance was collapsing, and everyone was watching. As the agents worked, I couldn't help but think of the irony. For months, Karen had been the self-appointed enforcer of petty HOA rules. Trash bins an inch too close to the curb, lawns not mowed to regulation height, porch lights too bright after 10 p.m. She had sent letters, fined people, even called tow truck. She loved to wield authority, but only the small, neighborhood kind where she felt safe. Now she was face to face with authority she couldn't bully, couldn't outvote, couldn't fine. And she didn't know how to handle it. I folded my arms, leaning against my fence, and watched her unravel. It was almost cinematic. The suburban queen brought low not by rebellion, but by her own scissors and arrogance. And as more federal vehicles lined the street, I knew this was only the beginning. She thought she had cut a simple wire. She had, in fact, cut straight into a chain of consequences that would escalate beyond anything she could imagine. By the time the second black SUV rolled away, the neighborhood had transformed into a live spectacle. It wasn't just the men in suits documenting every inch of Karen's front yard, it was the cluster of gawkers recording shaky videos on their phones, whispering in disbelief. Kids perched on bicycles at the end of the street. Retirees leaned on their mailboxes, sipping coffee like it was some front-row matinee. And right there in the middle of it all, Karen, the self-proclaimed guardian of HOA purity, was unraveling in real time. I leaned casually on my porch railing, watching the scene with the detached calm of someone who knew exactly how the dominoes would fall next. Karen wasn't quiet, though. Oh no. She was on the offensive, pacing in her driveway, shouting at the agents as if sheer volume could restore her supremacy. "You people have no right," she barked, her voice cracking as the lead agent calmly continued snapping photos. "This is private property. I'm an elected board member. You can't just barge into our neighborhood like some armed circus." The agent didn't even blink. He had the patience of a stone wall. "Ma'am, cutting this line has triggered alerts across multiple federal monitoring systems. This is no longer a neighborhood matter. Please remain calm while we document evidence." That "please" hit her pride harder than any insult could have. Karen thrived on conflict, but only when she held the upper hand. She loved citing bylaws, waving printed HOA regulations in people's faces. But her laminated power meant nothing here, and she knew it. So she switched tactics, classic Karen pivot. "Fine. If you want evidence, then look at him," she snapped, jabbing a finger toward me. "He's the one running suspicious cables through his yard. He's the one bringing government spies into our community. You're all protecting him because you're probably part of whatever operation he's running." I couldn't help but smirk. "Karen, my operation is called having a job. Some of us do actual work during the day instead of hunting down weeds and mailboxes." The neighbors laughed under their breath, which only fueled her fury. She puffed up, red-faced, and waved the cut cable like a battle flag. "You see? This arrogance is exactly the problem. He thinks he's above the rules, above the HOA. He thinks federal laws matter more than our community agreements." The lead agent finally broke his professional silence with a tone that could have frozen lava. "Ma'am, federal law does, in fact, supersede your HOA bylaws. Please refrain from obstructing further." Her mouth opened and closed like a fish on dry land. You could practically see the steam rising from her ears. But before she could sputter another word, one of the other agents approached her with a small device. He waved it near her hands, the severed wire still dangling like a prop. The device beeped. He nodded toward his superior. Confirmed termination point. Timestamp matches the breach. Karen blinked, confused. What is that? Some kind of toy? You people are making this up. You can't prove anything with your gadgets. Oh, but they can, I chimed in, almost cheerfully. That little gadget just confirmed you personally cut the line. Congratulations, you're officially evidence. The agent didn't smile, but I swear I saw the corner of his mouth twitch like he wanted to. Karen, however, wasn't amused. She threw the cable down at her feet as if discarding it could erase the act. I don't recognize your authority, she shouted, stomping the ground like a toddler denied dessert. You can't arrest me in my own driveway. No one said anything about arresting you, ma'am, the lead agent replied smoothly. Yet. That yet echoed like a thunderclap. The neighbors leaned in, hungry for more drama. I folded my arms tighter, enjoying the unraveling. Karen had always been the one dishing humiliation. Fines for garden gnomes, warnings for slightly overgrown hedges, even a citation once because my recycling bin lid wasn't fully closed. Now she was the one squirming, and every petty wound she'd inflicted on this street was being avenged silently by the looks of pure satisfaction on everyone's faces. But then came the twist. Karen wasn't just going to fold. Oh no. She pulled out her phone. At first, I assumed she was calling a lawyer. But no. She was dialing 911. The dispatcher's voice was faint but audible in the quiet. 911, what's your emergency? Karen's tone shifted instantly into wounded victim mode, the same one she used when she wanted sympathy from HOA board members. Yes, this is Karen. Karen Hollingsworth, board member of the Willow Creek HOA. There are armed men trespassing on my property pretending to be government agents. I need police assistance immediately. They're harassing me, taking pictures of my home, threatening me. The agent calmly took out his own radio and, with the practiced precision of someone used to dealing with panicked civilians, called in a verification. Within seconds, the dispatcher's voice crackled back through his line. Copy that, agents already confirmed on scene. Local police advised of your presence. Stand by. Karen's mouth dropped open. She tried again, desperate. No, you don't understand. They're not real. They're trying to cover for my neighbor's crimes. The agent turned to her, voice level but laced with finality. Ma'am, the local precinct has been notified of our presence. Your call is logged. Any further false reports will be considered obstruction. I advise you to stop now. The silence that followed was brutal. Even the cicadas seemed to pause. Karen's attempt at summoning backup had failed spectacularly. She was cornered, outmatched, and exposed. But she wasn't out of fight. She spun toward the crowd of neighbors, seeking allies. Don't you all see? He's turning this place into a surveillance hub. He's bringing the military into our peaceful community. Do you want your children growing up under cameras and wires and strangers with guns? It was a bold play, I'll give her that. But the crowd wasn't buying it. A neighbor named Mark, who Karen once fined for leaving Christmas lights up until February, called out. Karen, you cut the wrong guy's cable this time. Maybe you should have stuck to lawn complaints. The laughter spread. Karen's face twisted, caught between rage and desperation. She turned back toward me, her eyes narrowing to slits. This isn't over. You think you've won, but the HOA has more power than you realize. You'll regret making me look foolish. I let her threat hang in the air for a moment, then delivered the line I'd been saving. Karen, you don't need my help to look foolish. You're doing a world-class job all by yourself. That broke the crowd. Even some of the agents looked like they were suppressing smirks. Karen stormed into her house, slamming the door with a finality that shook the glass. But I knew her retreat wasn't surrender, it was recalibration. Karen never accepted defeat, not fully. She'd be back with a new angle, a new scheme, and I needed to be ready. The agents finished their documentation, assured me a repair team would restore my secure line within the hour, and gave me a card in case Karen escalated. They drove off, leaving behind a neighborhood buzzing with gossip. For a moment, it felt like the storm had passed. But in my gut, I knew this was only round one. The morning after the Pentagon SUVs rolled out of our cul-de-sac, you'd have thought the neighborhood had turned into a reality TV set. Neighbors walked their dogs slower than usual, pretending not to rubberneck at Karen's house. Kids biked past in loops, circling just close enough to peer at her curtains. Even the mailman lingered longer than normal, clearly savoring the fallout. But Karen? She was quiet. Too quiet. For someone who usually patrolled the neighborhood at dawn like a suburban general inspecting her troops, her absence was suspicious. I knew better than to relax. Karen's silence was never peace, it was plotting. I made coffee and logged back onto my freshly restored secure line, half expecting another glitch. The Pentagon's contractors had worked through the night, burying reinforced cabling so deep Karen would have needed a jackhammer to reach it. A polite but firm email from the project manager had landed in my inbox, reminding me that any further interference from external parties must be reported immediately for federal review. Translation: keep an eye on Karen. They didn't trust her to stop, and neither did I. Around noon, I saw her again. She emerged from her house in a crisp blouse and oversized sunglasses, clutching a thick binder. That binder, I knew, was her weapon of choice. It contained the HOA bylaws she worshipped like scripture. She strutted toward my driveway, waving the binder like she was about to deliver the Sermon on the Mount. I braced myself. "You think you're clever," she began, her tone sharp enough to slice glass. "Calling your little friends in their black cars to intimidate me. But I've reviewed every section of our HOA charter, and I've found multiple violations you've committed. Unauthorized exterior equipment, non-standard wiring, excessive lighting near your property line. You've broken so many rules, I could have you fined out of this neighborhood." I sipped my coffee and stared at her, unimpressed. "Karen, the Pentagon installed that cabling. You want to fine the Department of Defense." She didn't flinch. "Don't twist this. The HOA governs appearances, and appearances matter more than your supposed contracts. I've already scheduled an emergency board meeting tonight to vote on sanctions against you. And this time, the neighbors won't be laughing." That last part told me everything. She wasn't just trying to punish me, she was trying to salvage her reputation. Being humiliated in front of the entire block had rattled her. Now she needed to reassert control. And what better way than summoning her little kingdom of board members and declaring war on me? I didn't argue. I didn't tell her that federal law trumped HOA bylaws every time. I just smiled faintly and said, "Good luck with your meeting. Hope you bring snacks." That smile infuriated her more than any rebuttal. She snapped the binder shut and marched away, muttering something about community standards. By sunset, cars started pulling into her driveway, fellow board members, her loyal lieutenants. I recognized them. Tom, the treasurer who once fined a family $50 for leaving a basketball hoop out overnight. Denise, the secretary who lived to draft long-winded violation letters. And Bill, the vice president, who mostly just liked feeling important. Karen had assembled her war council. I decided to attend. As a homeowner, I had the right, and frankly, I couldn't resist. I walked into her living room, where the blinds were drawn tight and a folding table was covered in papers. Karen sat at the head like a queen on her throne, binder open, gavel in hand. Yes, she had brought a gavel. "This emergency session," she declared, slamming the gavel on the table, "is to address the egregious violations committed by one of our residents, violations that threaten the harmony and safety of Willow Creek." She gestured dramatically toward me, as though she were pointing out a witch at a medieval trial. The others turned, some looking uncomfortable. "Karen," I said dryly, "you know this isn't a courtroom, right? You don't need to channel Judge Judy." Her eyes narrowed, but she pressed on. "He has installed unauthorized cabling. He has permitted suspicious vehicles to parade through our street. He has intimidated neighbors with government presence. This is conduct unbecoming of a member of our community. I move to fine him and initiate removal proceedings. Removal? I repeated. You're trying to evict me because the Pentagon repaired my internet? Tom cleared his throat nervously. Karen, is that even legal? I mean, federal. Silence, she snapped. We must uphold our bylaws above all else. If we let one man bring chaos, what stops the next? I leaned back in my chair, amused. Karen, the Pentagon doesn't attend HOA hearings. They investigate them. You might want to reconsider your priorities. Denise scribbled furiously in the minutes log, while Bill shifted uncomfortably, clearly not wanting to be part of whatever hornet's nest Karen was kicking. The tension was thick. Then Karen played her ace card. I have already contacted the county zoning office, she announced smugly. I've reported the cabling as an unpermitted modification. Once the inspector arrives, your so-called government friends won't be able to shield you. They'll shut you down themselves. That landed like a grenade. Even I had to admit, it was a clever move. If she couldn't beat me with HOA power, she'd try to drag in local authorities, hoping bureaucracy would work in her favor. But Karen had underestimated one thing. The Pentagon's patience for interference was razor thin. The moment a zoning inspector flagged anything, federal clearance teams would intervene. And if Karen thought she was in hot water before, she hadn't seen anything yet. I smiled again, calm as ever. That's bold, Karen. You sure you want to invite more government into your life? Last time they showed up in 30 minutes. Imagine what happens when you poke them twice. The board members exchanged uneasy glances. Doubt was creeping in. They'd seen the black SUVs too, seen Karen nearly hauled off her driveway. And now she was doubling down, dragging them with her. Karen slammed the gavel again, rattling the table. We are the authority here. This neighborhood will not be run by outsiders. That was her fatal flaw, believing her HOA kingdom could outmuscle federal jurisdiction. And as I left her house that night, I knew exactly what would happen. The county inspector would show up, clipboard in hand, ready to nitpick. And 30 minutes later, the Pentagon would return, with more than cameras this time. When I closed my door behind me, I almost felt bad for Karen. Almost. She wanted a war, and she was about to find out what happens when your battlefield is federal property. What she didn't realize was that her crusade wasn't just drawing government attention, it was putting her name on official watch lists. She wasn't fighting me anymore. She was fighting the United States government. And unlike an HOA fine, there was no appeal form for that. The county inspector arrived the next morning in a beige sedan that looked like it hadn't had a wash since the Bush administration. He stepped out, middle-aged, clipboard in hand, the kind of man who'd built his whole personality around municipal code. His khakis were starched, his polo shirt tucked too tightly into his waistband, and his expression radiated the smug energy of someone who believed a citation was the pinnacle of justice. I almost pitied him. Almost. Karen, on the other hand, was positively glowing. She marched out of her house with that same binder clutched to her chest, practically skipping toward him. "Mr. Callahan," she cried, her voice sugary sweet. "Thank you for coming on such short notice. This neighborhood has standards, and one of our residents has been flagrantly violating them. You'll find all the details right here." She thrust the binder into his hands as though she were delivering the nuclear code. Callahan adjusted his glasses, glanced at the binder, and then at me. "Morning. I'm here to inspect the property modifications. You installed cabling without county permits." I smiled faintly. "Not exactly. You'll want to be careful before you start writing anything down. That cabling isn't a backyard pet project. It belongs to the Department of Defense." Karen scoffed, loud enough for half the block to hear. "There he goes again, with his ridiculous government excuses. Mr. Callahan, don't let him intimidate you. This man thinks he's above the rules, and if we don't stop him, our whole community will look like a military base." The inspector frowned, flipping through her binder. Well, regardless of who installed it, if there's no permit on file, it's my job to document and issue citations. I shrugged. Your job just got a lot more complicated. Right on cue, a black SUV rolled around the corner. This one wasn't subtle. Government plates gleamed in the sun, and the driver pulled up directly in front of my property, stepping out with a crisp efficiency that screamed federal. The man wasn't wearing a suit this time. Combat boots, tactical pants, a windbreaker with a Pentagon insignia on the chest. His presence turned the inspector's frown into a grimace. "Morning," the agent said, flashing a badge so quickly it might as well have been a weapon. "We were alerted to a county inspection request." "Who filed the complaint?" Karen shot her hand up like a schoolgirl volunteering in class. "I did. I'm on the HOA board, and this man has been running unapproved cabling across our neighborhood. It's unsightly, dangerous, and a violation of code. You can't just come in here and act like the military owns our streets." The agent turned to her slowly, like a predator locking onto prey. "Ma'am, that cabling is part of a secure federal communication line. Cutting or tampering with it is a federal offense. Interfering with its maintenance is also a federal offense. Filing obstructive reports against its existence? That's entering very dangerous territory." Karen's jaw dropped, but only for a second. Then she found her second wind, puffing up like a balloon refusing to deflate. "You can't just override the county. This inspector has jurisdiction. He's here to do his job, and I won't let you bully him out of it." The inspector, Callahan, looked like he wanted to sink into the pavement. He glanced between Karen and the agent, clearly realizing he'd been dragged into something far above his pay grade. I just follow the code. If there's federal documentation." "There is," the agent cut in sharply. He produced a slim folder from his bag and slapped it onto Callahan's clipboard. "Classified clearance. This cabling is non-negotiable. Any interference will be escalated. Do you want to be responsible for triggering a federal security review, Mr. Callahan?" The poor inspector blanched. "No, sir." Karen, however, wouldn't quit. "This is harassment. He's turning our neighborhood into a surveillance zone, and you're all covering for him. We have bylaws, we have rights, and I won't stand for this military takeover." Her voice carried, and by then half the block had gathered again. Neighbors whispered among themselves, phones discreetly raised to capture video. Karen was digging her own grave in 1080p, and she didn't even know it. The agent sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose like a man whose patience had finally worn thin. "Ma'am, I strongly advise you to stop speaking." But Karen didn't stop. She marched right up to him, jabbing her finger into his chest. "No. You stop. I don't care who you think you are, you don't outrank the HOA. You can't just storm into people's homes, set up cables, and pretend you're above the law. This is tyranny. This is a violation of everything our community stands for." The crowd gasped. Even I had to admit, it took a special kind of delusion to jab a Pentagon agent in broad daylight and call him a tyrant. The agent didn't flinch. He simply pulled out his radio. "Requesting escalation team. Civilian interference at Willow Creek. Advise local precinct standby." Karen's face drained of color. "Escalation team? What do you mean, escalation? This is private property. You can't bring soldiers into my neighborhood." "Oh, I can," he replied coolly. "And I will." Within minutes, another vehicle arrived. This time, it wasn't a black SUV. It was a truck. A communications truck, bristling with antennae, pulling into the cul-de-sac like it owned the place. Men and women in tactical gear poured out, setting up equipment on Karen's lawn without so much as a glance at her. They staked temporary fences, unloaded cases, and within moments, Karen's pristine front yard looked like a forward operating base. The neighbors gasped again, some openly laughing. Karen shrieked, flailing her arms. "No. You can't do this. This is MY property. You're trespassing. I'll sue every single one of you." The agent ignored her. He turned to me instead. "We apologize for the inconvenience, sir. We'll be installing a reinforced relay here to ensure uninterrupted operations. Should have been done sooner. You'll experience no more outages." I nodded deadpan. "Appreciate it. Though you might want to bill the HOA, they seem to think they're in charge." The crowd chuckled, but Karen wasn't laughing. She was in full meltdown mode, screaming into her phone now. "Hello? Yes, police? There's an armed military invasion happening on my lawn. They're building towers. You need to send backup immediately." The agent raised an eyebrow, listening to her frantic call. Then he turned to Callahan, the poor inspector still clutching his clipboard like a lifeline. "Mr. Callahan, thank you for your time. You're dismissed." Callahan didn't argue. He practically sprinted to his car and peeled away, leaving Karen abandoned in her crusade. That's when the local police finally showed up, responding to her desperate call. 2 squad cars rolled in, lights flashing. Karen waved her arms like a castaway spotting rescue. "Finally! Arrest them! Arrest him!" She pointed at me, then at the agents setting up equipment. The officers stepped out, took one look at the Pentagon badges, and stiffened. They exchanged a glance, then approached Karen. "Ma'am, we've been advised these operations are authorized. You'll need to step back." Karen's scream could have cracked windows. "You're all corrupt. You're all in on it. This is a coup against the HOA." By the next morning, Willow Creek wasn't just a neighborhood anymore, it was a circus. Word had spread far beyond our block. Cars slowed down to gawk at the Pentagon relay tower humming away in Karen's yard. Teenagers from other subdivisions biked in just to film TikToks in front of the camouflaged equipment. Someone even spray-painted Area 51 Junior on the sidewalk overnight. My HOA Queen Bee neighbor had gone from feared enforcer to national punchline, and every hour she sank deeper into her own quicksand. But if there was one thing I'd learned, it was this. Karen didn't quit. She didn't apologize, didn't retreat. No, Karen escalated. And true to form, she launched her boldest, most reckless move yet. It started with a flyer. Every mailbox on the street had one stuffed inside by noon. Bold letters screamed across the top. * Emergency Community Action Meeting. Take back Willow Creek. * The bottom listed a time, 7 p.m., and the location, Karen's house. I nearly spit out my drink when I read the tagline. * Stop the military occupation. Restore HOA authority. * By late afternoon, I could hear her prepping through the walls. Chairs scraping, tables being set, the whir of her printer spitting out reams of evidence. I even saw her stringing up a banner on her garage that read, * Protect our neighborhood, say no to federal tyranny. * It was so over the top it bordered on parody. But the terrifying part? People came. Not everyone, but enough to give her hope. A dozen loyalists showed up, mostly the same board members who had already been burned in her schemes. They sat in folding chairs in her driveway, fanning themselves in the evening heat, as Karen stood at the front with her infamous binder and a borrowed bullhorn. "Friends, neighbors, patriots," she began, her voice booming across the cul-de-sac. "Our community has been invaded. Our rights stripped. Our bylaws ignored. The Pentagon has built a surveillance outpost in our neighborhood, without our consent, without our vote, and without regard for our rules. Tonight we take back control." The crowd clapped weakly, but she soaked it up like she was headlining Madison Square Garden. She flipped open her binder and waved a stack of photos. "I have documented every infraction, every violation, every trespass. And I will not rest until this neighborhood is free from military occupation. But I cannot do it alone. I need you to stand with me." I leaned against my porch railing, watching with detached amusement. She was trying to spin federal jurisdiction into some kind of neighborhood revolution. The irony was rich. The same woman who once fined a neighbor for leaving a rake leaning against their shed was now railing against government overreach. But then she did something that turned my amusement into alarm. She unveiled her plan. She pointed at the relay tower humming in her yard. At midnight tonight we cut the power. We pull their plugs. We show them this neighborhood bows to no one, not the Pentagon, not Washington, not anyone. Gasps rippled through the small crowd. A few of her diehards clapped, but others shifted nervously in their seat. Even Bill, the HOA vice president, raised his hand timidly. Karen, I don't think cutting military equipment is, a good idea?" Karen whirled on him. "That's exactly what they want you to think. That we're powerless. But if we stand together, if we act, they'll have no choice but to respect our authority." I could practically see the headlines already. Asterisk, local HOA sabotages Pentagon operation, arrests follow. Asterisk, the woman was about to walk her followers straight into federal prison, binder in hand. I decided to intervene. Not to save her, but to ensure she couldn't drag the whole neighborhood down with her. I stepped off my porch and walked over, all eyes turning as I strolled up like I was arriving fashionably late to a party. Karen stiffened, gripping her bullhorn tighter. "Well, well," I said casually, "starting a midnight raid now? That's bold. But you might want to think twice. The last time you cut one of those cables, the Pentagon showed up in 30 minutes. Imagine what they'll do if you take down an entire relay." Her face reddened. "You don't belong here. This is a community meeting." I smirked. "Oh, I belong more than anyone. And you should know, while you've been handing out flyers, the Pentagon's been watching. They've got your entire little speech recorded. That bullhorn? Might as well be a confession." The crowd murmured nervously. One woman actually stood up and left, shaking her head. Karen's grip on her followers was slipping, and I twisted the knife. "You think you're the hero of this story, Karen, but you're not. You're the cautionary tale. The one who thought HOA bylaws outranked federal law. The one who thought she could cut a wire and win. You've made yourself a name, all right, but not the one you wanted. You're on lists now. Watch lists. And trust me, those are harder to get off than an HOA blacklist." The effect was immediate. People shifted in their seats, whispering. Bill set his chair down and muttered, I think I should go," before shuffling away. Denise clutched her purse tighter, clearly reconsidering. Karen's revolution was crumbling before it even began. But Karen didn't give up. She raised her bullhorn, shouting over the retreating crowd. "Don't listen to him. He's manipulating you. He's part of their operation. If we don't act now, we'll lose everything." Her words echoed off the houses, desperate and hollow. By the time she lowered the bullhorn, only 3 people remained seated, her most loyal zealots. The rest had dispersed, unwilling to risk becoming collateral in her war with reality. And then, as if scripted by fate, the black SUVs returned. They rolled in silent and smooth, headlights cutting across her driveway. Agents stepped out, not rushing, not aggressive, but with the quiet authority of people who had already won. The lead agent looked at Karen, then at the dwindling crowd. "Ma'am, we've monitored your meeting. Your intent to sabotage federal equipment has been documented. This is your final warning. Cease all interference immediately, or we will escalate." Karen's bravado finally cracked. Her bullhorn slipped from her hands, clattering to the driveway. Her binder dangled limply at her side. For the first time, she looked small. Deflated. The agents didn't wait for her reply. They packed up the bullhorn, the flyers, even some of the papers from her binder. "Evidence," one said briskly. Then they left as quickly as they'd come, their presence lingering like a storm cloud over the cul-de-sac. Karen stumbled back toward her door, muttering to herself, her once loyal zealots trailing behind like embarrassed children. The banner still hung on her garage, but it sagged in the evening breeze, pitiful and torn at the corners. The next morning, there were no flyers, no meetings, no bullhorn speeches. Karen stayed inside, curtains drawn, blinds shut. The neighborhood was quieter than it had been in years. Peaceful, almost. The Pentagon eventually dismantled the relay tower, leaving nothing but a small, reinforced junction box discreetly tucked away. Life began to return to normal, or as normal as it could in a neighborhood where your HOA president had nearly declared war on the federal government. Neighbors started waving at me more. Conversations at mailboxes were friendlier. And every now and then, someone would lean in and whisper, "Did you see Karen's face when the SUVs rolled up?" Priceless.